I have 7:01. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Will the recorder please call the roll? Counselor Dreer?
Present.
Counselor Irvin?
Here.
Counselor Fleck?
Here.
Counselor Merriday?
Here.
Counselor Savage?
Here.
Counselor Stennett? And Mayor Solsby? Here. Thank you. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Items to be added to the agenda. The following item has been proposed as an item to be added to the agenda pursuant to established city council rules. No item may be added without a unanimous consent of the council members present. It's recommended that the following item be added to the agenda as item 7I, resolution authorizing the financing through U.S. Bancorp Government Leasing and Finance, Inc. Counselor Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that this item be added to the agenda. Second.
We have a motion with a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Appearance of interested citizens. This is a time for citizen comment. The council will first take comments addressing items not listed on the agenda for a maximum of 30 minutes. The council will then take comments addressing action items on the agenda for a maximum of 30 minutes. Individual speakers must be recognized by the presiding officer, provide their name, identify whether they are a city resident, and if so, their ward. Please limit comments to 3 minutes or less with council approval. Comments regarding any matter scheduled for a public hearing may be provided only during that hearing. The council will not make any decisions based on public comment. However, staff and council may choose to ask questions or comment following the conclusion of citizen comments. Randall Lammerman.
So I'm Randall Lammer. I do live within the city, Ward 2. So first off, I'd just like to make one statement. I've been in this town for 17 years. My wife was born and raised here. And I think for the most part, other than maybe Dana, the sitting council members, I haven't heard any of you guys do any sort of town hall meeting or anything to see what the people of your ward actually want on the topics that you guys cover. I know Stennis not here, but I've never had him call a town hall of any sort or try to pull the people of his ward together to find out what they feel about something, especially since we have 2 of the 3 homeless camps in our ward. We have apartment complexes going up, which is creating a lot more traffic, a lot more congestion to our side of town, which so be it, town grows, that's fine. The other topic was, most of you may have already know, the recall just happened. I didn't have any direct action with that or anything, but as far as I know, you guys have 5 days to either recall or submit a justification letter. You all preach about how you're looking out for the best interest of the community and the town. Instead of wasting money on a special election, I think you should all, the 3 of you, should resign. Especially Alex, because you weren't elected. And then put your names back in the hat to be reelected. And if you were meant to be here, you'll get reelected. If not, you won't. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah Monsif.
Hi, I'm Deborah Monsiv, and I do not live in the city limits, but I found it very troubling that the proclamation for Pride Month has not been signed. And I think in the in your municipal code under ethics that, council members should likewise do everything in their power to ensure impartial application of the law to all citizens and equal treatment to each citizen before the law without regard to race, national origin, sex, age, social situation, religion, marital status, familiar status, domestic partnership status, sexual orientation, source of income, and disability status. And I just think it's really sad that you've all made an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, which has equality laws. And if other proclamations had never been done in city council, I wouldn't be standing here, but others have been. And I don't think that you are using your office equally to all the citizens in Cottage Grove. And then I want to speak on the recall as well. And Alex wasn't elected, but she was unanimously voted in to council. And I think it's unfair to ask the two that were voted in to resign, or Alex, who was appointed unanimously. So thank you.
Thank you. Leah Cooper.
I just want to, my name is Leah Cooper. I'm Ward 2. I'm a citizen of I'm from Cottage Grove. I just want to say that nothing has changed. I spoke last time. There has been no improvements. I've done what the police chief asked me to do, and I still fight the same issues every day, all the time. It's very exhausting, and I just want to remind everybody that it's an issue that needs to be dealt with, and that's the homeless camps and their effect on the community.
Thank you. Joel Wrighton.
Good afternoon, Council, Mayor, and City Manager. Joel Wrighton, 926 South R Street. Just 3 things that I'd like to bring up to the council for their consideration in the future. Number 1, I would like to see a full accounting of the transient room tax made, the monies received, and how exactly that money is spent. I'd like to see some sort of a statement put in the future budget packet for members on how transient room tax is to be looked at and how it is to be spent. And thirdly, I'd like to see a full accounting of the Eugene Symphony and the dollars that the city has spent and the other expenditures that it takes to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearings. Item A, public hearing for proposed supplemental budget. Staff report by Finance Director, Ms. Likens.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. There is a need to adopt a supplemental budget. Excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Item A, open public hearing. I will now open the first public hearing at 7:10 p.m. This public hearing is being held for the purpose of taking comments on city proposed supplemental budget. Sorry, Ms. Likens.
No problem. I didn't realize either. Thank you. Thank you, Council. This evening, we have before us a supplemental budget hearing to be held. There is a need for a supplemental budget for expenses not anticipated at the time the original budget was adopted. This proposed supplemental budget appropriates interfund loan proceeds from the Storm Drain Reserve Fund to the Industrial Park Fund. The original budget anticipated sale of property proceeds in the amount of $660,000, which is not obtainable this fiscal year. An industrial lot is anticipated to be sold, but it is unknown if it will close prior to the end of this fiscal year, creating the need to provide funds to service debt if the sale is not finalized. The interfund loan amount from the Storm Drain Reserve is $235,045. In addition to that, proposed supplemental budget appropriates interfund loan proceeds from the Storm Drain Reserve Fund to cover expenses associated with the January 2024 ice storm. The interfund loan is being made to the general fund in the amount of $285,000, street fund in the amount of $1,140,000, water fund in the amount of $9,775, and the wastewater fund in the amount of $578,330. The total interfund loan amount to be $2,013,105 from the storm drain reserve. The repayment of this loan is anticipated at the time the city receives funding from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA. Staff is currently working towards securing reimbursement for eligible costs and anticipates funding to be provided in the fall of 2024. For public hearing is required. The notice of the supplemental budget was included on the council's agenda for this date and advertised in the Cottage Grove Sentinel on June 19th, using the same methods as the original budget, and met the notice requirement of at least 5 days. So it's staff's recommendation that you hold the public hearing to consider all comments offered during the public hearing. If the supplemental budget is approved, there are additional appropriations of $2,013,105 in the funds listed. The appropriation does not change in the industrial park operations, and that the sale of the property is reduced by the same amount of the loan, and the contingency line item will be reduced in the same amount as the transfer to water reserve fund, resulting in a net zero change in the fund.
We will now take public testimony. For all persons testifying, please state your name and address for the record. Do we have anyone that would like to testify? I see none. Questions from the council? All right. I will now close the public hearing at 7:13 p.m. At this time, I will now open the second public hearing. This public hearing is being held for the purpose of taking comments on the proposed use of state shared revenues. We will now have a staff report by Finance Director, Ms. Likens.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. State law requires that you hold 2 public hearings on the proposed uses of state shared revenues, one before the Budget Committee, which was held on May 16th, and one before the City Council. Each hearing provides an opportunity for citizens of Cottage Grove to comment on the proposed uses of the funds. Staff's recommendation to hold a public hearing on those proposed uses in relation to the entire budget.
We'll now take public testimony. For all persons testifying, please state your name and address for the record. Do we have anyone that would like to testify? I see none. Are there any questions from the council? I see none. I'll now close this public hearing at 7:14 p.m. I'll now open the final public hearing at 7:14 p.m. This public hearing is being held for the purpose of taking comments on the 2024-25 budget. Staff report by Ms. Likens.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The City of Cottage Grove Budget Committee met and approved the 24-25 budget. This public hearing is a requirement again of Oregon revised statutes and must be held prior to the City Council adopting the budget resolution. The purpose of this hearing is to receive comments from the public regarding how the city spends its money. The Budget Committee did not make modifications to the proposed budget. It's staff's recommendation that the council hold the public hearing on the 24-25 budget and consider making changes as requested or deemed appropriate that are allowed lawfully by Oregon budget law.
We'll now take public testimony. For all persons testifying, please state your name and address for the record. Do we have anyone that would like to testify? I see none. Are there any questions from the council? I see none. I'll now close the public hearing at 7:15 p.m. Consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion with the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Item 7, resolutions and ordinances. Resolution adopting supplemental budget for fiscal year 2023-24 and making appropriations. Staff report by Ms. Likens.
Thank you again, Mayor, Council. This was as a result of the public hearing that we just held this evening for the supplemental budget for fiscal year 23-24. that deals with the appropriations from the Industrial Park Fund as well as the funding for the increase for the general fund appropriations, all to do with the ice storm as described previously. So if adopted, the supplemental budget increases the general fund appropriations by 288,500, street fund appropriations by 1,140,000, water fund appropriations by 9,775, wastewater fund appropriations by the 578,330. And the industrial park fund reduces the contingency line item and creates the transfer to the water reserve fund in the same amount with no increase to the fund. So it's the staff's recommendation to adopt the resolution.
Counselor Urban,
What was that resolution number?
resolution number.
2139.
Thank you. I move that the council adopt resolution number 2139.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Any discussion?
I just want to acknowledge Mr. Stewart and I believe Shauna and all that were involved in the tracking of all this information to make it very smooth from the perspective of the city to timely, quickly recover this money. It was an enormous amount in a short amount of time. And that was very, very notable, and really appreciate that we secured this and are restored. So I want to say thanks.
Mr. Stewart.
Mayor, Councilor Urban, thank you very much. I just want to let you know that we've had 2 meetings with FEMA, and we have another one tomorrow to kind of start presenting them with information. So as soon as we get them all the information in their acceptable format, hopefully we'll receive reimbursement for these expenses. So we're still a little ways away. I just want to make that clear.
Thank you. Anyone else? We have a motion with a second. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Savage,
Aye.
Counselor Fleck,
Aye.
Counselor Merriday,
Aye.
Counselor Urban.
Aye.
Counselor Dreer,
Aye.
Mayor Solsby.
Aye. Unanimous. Item B, resolution declaring the city of Cottage Grove's election to receive state revenues. Staff report by Ms. Likens.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. ORS 221.770 pertains to state shared revenues and requires cities to adopt an ordinance or resolution stating that they want to receive the state shared revenues. It further requires us to pass a resolution stating that we provide at least 4 designated municipal services. Provisions of the law requires the city certify 2 public hearings were held, one before the budget committee and one before the city council. Those requirements have been met. So if we do intend to receive these monies, it's the city staff's recommendation that the council adopt one resolution declaring the city's election to receive state revenues and adopt a second resolution relating to the city's eligibility to receive state shared revenues. And they are 2 separate resolutions that are required.
Counselor Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the council adopt resolution 2140 and 2141.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Any discussion? Will the recorder please call the roll?
So I'm going to call a single roll vote, and there's 2 resolutions in the motion. So unless you'd like me to call them separately.
Single's fine.
Okay. Counselor Dreer.
Aye.
Counselor Merriday. Pardon me? Oh, thank you. Counselor Urban.
Aye.
Counselor Fleck.
Aye.
Counselor Savage.
Aye.
And Mayor Solsby.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. Item C, resolution certifying the city of Cottage Grove's eligibility to receive state shared revenues, cigarette, liquor, and highway taxes under ORS 221.760. Staff report by Ms. Likens.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. ORS 294-450 allows the transfer of appropriations within a fund. And at the time of the writing of this memorandum, there were still 2 more additional weeks of payables to happen. This is just an estimation of what we believe as staff will be spent during this fiscal year. And if it doesn't get spent, it stays within the fund that it's being appropriated in. You should have received it Friday morning in your agenda session. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Question is, the 2 resolutions that we just voted on, was we're recovering that second one right now, right?
We covered 7B and 7C with one motion. So we should be on
Yeah.
7D at this point, resolution transferring appropriation within various funds. And
Thank
I
you.
believe that's the one that was presented to council on Friday.
Correct.
Item D, resolution transferring appropriations within various funds. Staff report by Ms. Likens.
Thank you. Sorry for the confusion. So again, ORS 294-450 allows for the transfer appropriations within a fund. We did not have the resolution prepared at the time the memo was on June 14th, as there were 2 additional weeks of known payables that we would be accomplishing. And then the rest of it is an estimate as to where we will be come June 30 after all of the bills are received. And we have a modified accrual, so it's a 2-month process that we receive invoices that get put into the previous fiscal year. So at this point, you have a resolution before you that moves money from contingencies out of the internal support fund into the general fund and the street fund. There's 4 pages of these. Also, the water fund takes money from the contingency and distributes it through materials and services. Wastewater fund essentially does the same thing. And then the water reserve fund also transfers money to the debt service fund. So it's staff's recommendation to consider the proposed resolution to reappropriate the funds within the various departments for adoption this evening. And of course, if you have any questions, I'm glad to try to answer those.
Counselor Flack.
Madam Mayor, excuse me, I move that the council adopt resolution 2142. Am I correct here?
That's
Okay.
right.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Any discussion? See none. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Irvin,
Aye.
Counselor Savage,
Aye.
Counselor Fleck,
Aye.
Counselor Dreer,
Aye.
Counselor Merriday, Mayor Solsby.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. All right. Item C, resolution authorizing an interfund loan to the Industrial Park Fund from the Storm Drain Reserve. Staff report by Ms. Likens.
Thank you. So earlier this evening, you actually gave the mechanism through the supplemental budget to allow this to happen. But what this resolution does is authorizes the loan from the storm drain to the industrial park. So it's a kind of a 2-part situation that needed to occur. So again, we do anticipate that the receipts will come from the sale of the property, but this is Plan B in case it doesn't get here before June 28th, so that we can meet our debt service requirements. So it's staff's recommendation that the council adopt the resolution authorizing the interfund loan.
Counselor Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the council adopt resolution 2143 to authorize the interfund loan.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Any discussion? See none. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Savage,
Aye.
Counselor Merriday, Counselor Dreer,
Aye.
Counselor Fleck,
Aye.
Counselor Irvin,
Aye.
Mayor Solsby.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. Item F, resolution authorizing an interfund loan to the general fund, street fund, water fund, wastewater fund from the Storm Drain Reserve Fund. Staff report by Ms. Likens.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, you put the mechanism in place earlier with your supplemental budget. This actually authorizes the loan from the storm drain fund to the various funds associated with the costs for the ice storm. So it's staff's recommendation that council adopt the resolution authorizing the interfund loan.
Counselor Urban,
Thank you, Mayor. I move that council adopt resolution 2144, authorizing the interfund loan.
Second.
we have a motion with a second. Any discussion? See none. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Dreer,
Aye.
Counselor Urban,
Aye.
Counselor Fleck,
Aye.
Counselor Merity, Counselor Savage,
Aye.
Mayor Solsby.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. Item G, resolution adopting the 2024-25 budget, making appropriations and imposing and categorizing ad valorem taxes. Staff report by Ms. Likens.
Thank you again. The resolution that you have before you was updated as of Friday at this agenda session. It includes the ability to pay for the Middlefield property that we sold. And we have the proceeds from that, but I didn't have a mechanism in this year's budget to be able to pay the debt off. So what the changes were to this resolution touched about, I don't know, 4 different areas where we received the loan proceeds or the payoff into the fund. We then transfer those monies and then we were able to pay the debt. And that was the only change to the resolution from the one that was presented to you prior to that on the 14th. So it's staff's recommendation that we approve this resolution. It adopts the budget, it makes the appropriations, and it levies the taxes and categorizes.
Counselor Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is the resolution to adopt the budget for the next year. We wanted to thank Councilor Mary Day for running the budget committee meeting. And while trying to take to heart let's have all the discussion in that meeting. Fortunately, I'm failing to do that. But hopefully give enough prep time and discussion about why I want to discuss it again, that we could have a good discussion tonight and set a good direction going forward, whatever comes with the vote. So I guess a little backdrop would be we're up against obviously budget crunch. We have stated goals in our budget of how much carryover to bring into the next year. We obviously came in with just over $1 million shortfall, and wanted to look at those goals. Are they good goals? Are they reasonable for what we are doing now? Since to be told, this is the year that I realized that there were stated goals and that those were under the council's purview to set. And so I've had a couple of conversations with staff, city manager and finance director Likens regarding that. And I think if I could distill it down, I was wrestling between, do I make a motion to make individual line item changes that I saw fit, or that I think were best represented in what we're hearing in our budget committee meetings. But at the end of the day, what I would like to do is be most effective with whatever process we have so that we get closest to the end goal that we desire, which is increasing our unallocated fund balance as well as our contingency line items. So, I don't want to disrupt whatever may come in the process just by trying to make us 11th hour change right before the budget. So I think what I felt most comfortable with was saying, well, a couple of the items, just to be clear, I'm seeing that there is room potentially in the library department while maintaining arguably the same level of service, changing the staffing model to what we were pre-pandemic around 2020. That's one of the concepts, and looking at community services under the same light. And maybe that makes sense to look at that as we offload some of the responsibilities that may go to another organization at the same time. But the thrust of my goal here is to get on track to get our unallocated and fund balance back up and our contingency back up, and not just to the stated percentages that are in the goals in the budget, but to realistic ones. So I have asked to have that recommendation come from staff. What do they think is healthy? What is an achievable timeline to work within a budget to do that? And so I am prepared tonight to vote yes on this budget, but I just want it to be understood that it's with the conditions, and I'd like to maybe do this by motion. Maybe we can figure out what's the best way to do it. To relook at this budget, maybe in another 30 days or another 60 days or whatever is reasonable to have staff come back with, this is what we could do with this. And we can adopt something, we can adopt changes down the road. But we do need to get a budget in place before June 30th. So maybe I'd love to hear thoughts, feedback, something that seems reasonable. Some discussion, I suppose.
Counselor Merryday.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilor Irvin, particularly that you have searched your conscience, and I know that to be a true guiding light, and you do have the best interest in our city in mind. I also looked at numbers and played around a little bit. I know there was some contention. The age-old question is public safety or library services, even in our interview questions. I know that's a long burning question. I tried every way I could compare the police operations budget to our general fund and to our budget as a whole. I know that's kind of apples and oranges with the enterprise funds in there. I found a number of, I didn't find a pattern, but I do see that there was increases in all budgets from police operations from 23-24 to 24-25. There was an increase in the police operations budget of about 1.9%. If you applied that to the 23-24 library rate and increase the budget by that same amount, that would increase it to $4,056,993, which would be a difference in the proposed budget of this year of $37,000. In the bigger picture, we have an economy of scale difference between the police department and the library. So smaller changes will have a different effect in a small department, or financial changes will have a much different effect. I really do want to second what Councilor Dreyer had proposed, that we need a work session of looking at public safety, because we're operating under the Oregon law that requires the assessed value can increase no more than 3% per year. So we're on a fixed income where cost of living are going through the roof. So it's going to affect public safety in all departments. We found that with our roads, looking at trying to honor the citizens' request to repair our roads, the costs are unapproachable with our current budget. And we're having to look outside for other funding sources, which I'm certain we'll need to do with the police department. We are not competitive with other departments. We're not able to attract quality officers as well as other cities that have a much more financial wherewithal. So this is going to affect all of our operations here on out. It's going to affect our utility funds. The citizens are very concerned about the increase in utility rates, as they should be, but we are again facing costs going up for chemicals, fuels, etc. So nobody likes to see their bills go up, but an enterprise fund operates on a pay for the services. So if you don't increase the funds, we increase our budget deficit. So we're running in the red to do that. So this is going to be a larger question that we affect everything that we do in the future. Ad valorem taxes will not not cover the bills. So we need to look for additional revenue sources, and there is a reluctance for people, particularly on fixed incomes, to support increasing their taxes. I want to recall about 6 years ago, the proposed gas tax of 3 cents a gallon was voted down, and in the same voice, people demanded the roads to be fixed. So that's my 2 cents for the minute. Hope I didn't go over the time.
Counselor Drew.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I think I brought this up in the budget committee meetings, but some other cities, when they're looking at the budget, have a 5-year revenue forecast. Granted, of course, it's imperfect. It's a forecast, but I think that might help us really see what the costs are looking like and where we're projected to go. If everything stays the same and nothing stays the same, what does that look like? So I would request that for next budget committee for next year, that we have a 5-year projection.
Counselor Fleck.
Yeah, thank you. So I also was a little discouraged at the end of our budget process that there were some no votes. And it's interesting when I said, do you mind if I ask why no? Because I had not heard any concerns, that would lead to somebody voting no on the budget. And as it turns out, there were concerns around spending around the library, which I also share. Having been on this budget committee for many, many years, I know that for a long, long time, we actually only had 3 FTE with a department head and 1 full-time and 2 half-time employees. And so I was watching cuts in every other department and looking at how tight our ending unappropriated balance was. And so I certainly would have supported a reduction at that time, but there didn't seem to be consensus, and I'm a guy that likes to go with consensus. So I think, like Councilor Irvin, I certainly support adopting this budget, but would love to have a work session to talk about, okay, where is our funding at, and what are reasonable things we can do to keep as many services as possible while reducing our expenditures. So I fully support that. It's not that I'm not in favor of the library or I'm in favor of one or the other, although I was one of the folks that supported that item in our interview process. So I do think we have to prioritize, and I will say I think public safety is our number one priority, period. Public works and other mandated items that we have to do also very high on that list. Not that libraries aren't important. We certainly need to have a place for kids and people to be able to come in and read materials, and all the benefits the library gives. So I certainly am supportive of the library, but I also recognize this is one of the worst budgets I've seen. I would say the only one that was worse was my first year on budget in the year 2000, where the fire department employees were still actually employees of the city of Cottage Grove. And we were actually in that year cutting 1 firefighter and 1 police officer because the budget was so tight. So, I don't want to see us going back to those days. And that's where my motivation comes. So once again, I'm happy to support whatever the majority wishes on this.
Counselor Savage.
Thank you, Mayor. I think each of you have made some really great points. I was under the impression that this was going to come back to council at our retreat January-ish. So the conversation would happen then. I certainly support 30 days. I would imagine that the library is a space that would qualify for a lot of grants. And I would encourage us to start digging through those applications, see where we can apply for grants. I would support a revisit in 30 days to see, are there grants available that we can look for, which then takes it out of our budget. I would fully support something like that. I think libraries are really important to keep open. I think it's a wonderful tool to keep folks busy when there's nothing else going on. I know that I really appreciated the library during the pandemic. My kids were able to read lots of books and stay feeling like they were staying connected. And I really, really appreciated that. So I think that it's really important and valuable. The written word is incredibly valuable, as we saw during the ice storm. We couldn't get things out quick enough electronically. People didn't have service. And I think to lose the written word is doing us a disservice. However, as stated before, I think there's a lot of spaces for grants and ways to supplement that budget that maybe we don't have to pay for. So I would encourage that, and let's revisit this if it's 30 days, 60 days, or 6 months from now, or all of the above. So I would support it in passing it tonight, just so we can have something, but then let's bring it back in no more than 60 days. And I would support 30 days as well.
And I don't think anyone's talking about closing the library at all. I just think that we are in, as what's stated before, a very unusually tough budget year. And what we're doing tonight is Band-Aid, for lack of a better word, because if we don't get a handle on this, we'll be back in the same situation next year at budget time. So I would definitely support doing a work session and figuring out some ways to make some creative cuts and that will manage to keep up our services with public safety being number one. All right. Councilor Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the council adopt resolution 2145.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Any more discussion? I see none. Councilor Urban.
Just, I think I'll make the motion for that 30 days and the concerns of council. Just
All right. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Merida,
Aye.
Counselor Savage,
Aye.
Counselor Fleck,
Aye.
Counselor Dreer,
Aye.
Counselor Urban,
aye.
Mayor Solsby.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. Item H, resolution amending the comprehensive fee schedule. Staff report by Public Works and Development Director, Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. So this resolution is to amend the comprehensive fee schedule. It amends it in two sections. The first section is in government. There is being proposed a notary services fee. This fee is allowable under state law, and this maximum fee per notary act is $10 per action. What we found is during COVID, we had a drastic increase in notary services that we were providing the community as other entities were closed and not able to serve the public. And what we found is that we've continued a high level of service in the notary, and it takes a considerable amount of staff time to during the day to process the requests. So this fee will allow us to recover some of the costs for that service. And in section 3, the utilities section, this amends the water fees with an increase of 6% and a 3% increase for wastewater fees. These fees, the council might remember, was recommended by the FCS study that did a midterm review of our expenses and our revenues, and found that due to the severe increases in materials and services and cost of living, that the projected increases that our 5-year plan were not adequate. So these adjustments have been factored. They have been adopted in the budget, and this just codifies and amends the current comprehensive fee schedule.
Thank you. Councilor Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the council adopt resolution 2146, amending the comprehensive fee schedule.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Any discussion? Councilor Fleck.
Yeah, so I heard recall mentioned earlier, and I guess I need to call attention to the fact that this is one of the items on my sheet, is that I voted for the comprehensive fee schedule increase. I guess what I would really like is for folks to actually become educated to what's going on with our water, wastewater, and storm systems. We actually have 20-year plans called capital improvement plans, and we have a fee schedule that's designed to improve or keep up our water, wastewater, and storm systems so that they meet federal regulation and that they're sustainable. A few years ago, we actually had mains blow up under streets, taking out large portions of streets because the pipes in the ground are sometimes 50 or 60 years old and they had a 35-year lifespan. We have new TMDLs, which is total daily maximum load, requirements from DEQ that come down all the time. So temperature and which is why we put our effluent out on the golf course and out on the interchange and whatnot, so we don't put them into the streams. And we have costs that are unfunded mandates that are pushed down. I'm not saying they're not good mandates. I mean, we all want safe, healthy water for sure. We don't want to pollute our environment. So these are good things, but they also are expensive. And unfortunately, they're put on our backs as ratepayers. So once again, I don't love making increases in fees, but if we don't, we end up losing the system that we have. So once again, all I ask is folks to become informed. And with that, I support this motion. Resolution.
Counselor Savage.
Thank you, Mayor. On that same note, I see that it's projected for us to go up 6% in our water fees. What was the percentage that the chemicals went up? Do you have a guesstimate?
Counselor, I don't have that number off the top of my head, but we have, well, I do have a number. So like in wastewater, HERD is a contractor that takes our biosolids from the city, and mid-year they increased 25% of their charge. And we've seen this towards the end of this year, a stabilization of the chemical costs, but in some cases we've seen chemical increases at times 5 to 7% a week until they got stabilized. So we've seen a drastic increase in that. We've also, like most of the citizens in the Pacific Power, like they're served by Pacific Power, we received a 12% increase in our power fees. So you start adding up all these various different increases, and they far exceed the 3% that was factored when the FCS study projected revenues and expenses for the 5 years that we were in.
Thank you for clarifying.
We already have a motion in a second.
All right. We have a motion with a second. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Savage,
Aye.
Counselor Fleck.
Aye.
Counselor Merity,
Aye.
Counselor Dreer,
Aye.
Counselor Urban,
Aye.
Mayor Soulsby.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. All right. Item I. Resolution authorizing the financing through the U.S. Bancorp Government Leasing and Finance, Inc. Staff report by Ms. Likens.
Thank you, Mayor Council. This budget in 23-24 has included in it 4 police vehicles, fully upfitted with police equipment. This month, one of those vehicles finally arrived, and so we need the financing to go ahead and make the actual purchase this fiscal year. So U.S. Bancorp Government Leasing and Finance, Inc. Provided the least cost proposal. We only had 2 respondents, one at 10% interest, and this one is at 5.332% interest. So recommending U.S. Bancorp Government and Finance, Inc. They require authorization from you for the city manager to be able to sign all of the required documents and the adoption of a resolution. So you have before you a resolution for adoption. The total of the loan will be $60,826 at 5.332%, a term of actually 5 years. It says 4 in your memo, but when I reread it and was doing the math in my head just before the meeting, it's like, oh, that's 5 years. And it'll be a total cost of $69,696.64. A budget expense of $13,939.32 per fiscal year for the one vehicle with the fee upfit.
Counselor Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the council adopt resolution 2147 to authorize the total loan amount of $60,826 at 5.332% for a term of 5 years at a total cost of $69,696.64. Budget expense of $13,939.32 per fiscal year for one vehicle and upfitting.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Any more discussion? I see none. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Dreer,
Hi.
Counselor Merity, Counselor Urban,
Aye.
Counselor Fleck,
Aye.
Counselor Savage,
Aye.
Mayor Soulsby.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. Business from the City Council. Approval of change order for the South R Street Extension Project. Staff report by Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. So back on April 22nd, 2024, the City Council awarded the South R Street Extension Project. Mayor, this might be a good time to.
Mr. Stewart, I'm sorry. I'm going to recuse myself. My son works for Pacific Excavation.
Council President, thank you. So again, on April 22nd, the City Council awarded the South R Street Extension Project to Pacific Excavation. Branch Engineering designed and prepared the construction documents for the project, and the contract was awarded for $618,333.25. During the excavation and construction of the new road, Pacific Excavation ran into an excessive amount of water that was not accounted for in the original design. For those in the packet, I would just point out that on page, I believe, 5 of the packet, there's some pretty good pictures of the items they excavated out and the amount of water that was there. The water table was just under the surface, so there was a substantial amount. So because of that excessive water, there was change orders to the subgrades that stabilized it. Some dewatering of the subgrade, redesign of some retention walls for the drain and a drain tie-in. There was also perforated pipe behind the sidewalk and additional beehive inlet, which helped with the draining of the stormwater planters. There's only one item in here that's not related to the excessive water, and that's change order number 4. And that was to add 6-inch gate valves into the water system to help provide water for the future development of the neighboring parcels upon that, along that parcel. So the total change order request is for $120,312.23. And this funds will be paid for by the street, water, sewer, and storm system development charges. So recommendation is to approve the change order. Are there any questions?
Councilor Fleck.
Mr. Council President, I'll move that the City Council approve the change order for the South R Street Extension Project for $120,312.23.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilor Savage.
I just have a question because my inquiring brain wants to know. As I'm coming south on R Street and I stop on Sweet Lane, the new R Street that goes to the industrial district looks a lot wider than the R Street that's north of Sweet Lane. Am I seeing that correctly? And I'm not opposed to this, I'm just curious.
Yeah, Council President and Councilor Savage. It is wider, so you're transitioning from two lanes with bike lanes, travel lanes, and a median into what'll now be wider travel lanes with bike lanes. And then it even gets even wider when you get to the existing R Street in the industrial park. So it's kind of a widening out of that section of road that'll blend into the existing industrial park. I think staff reviewed, we could have maintained the existing width of the street that's in the industrial park, which I believe is about 90 feet wide. It's just a huge wide street. And so in discussion with city staff and the engineers, it was recommended to kind of make that downsizing, and that also allows for the stormwater detention facilities and that are needed for that new section of road. So you're correct, it's a little wider, but then it's not as wide as the existing industrial park road.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? The recorder, all in favor? Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Counselor Urban. Item B, ground lease agreement with Zipley Fiber for telecom shelter. Staff report by Mr. Mongan.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, Council. At the May 28th City Council meeting, Council adopted ordinance number 3183, granting a non-exclusive telecommunication franchise to Zipley Fiber Pacific LLC. It is now appropriate for the council to consider a request for a ground lease of a portion of right-of-way to Zipley Fiber for the purposes of placing a telecommunications shelter and backup generator. The location of the ground lease is a portion of East Madison Avenue right-of-way, east of Highway 99 and abutting the railroad right-of-way, as is shown in the attached map. The attached letter of intent provides information on the proposed terms of the ground lease agreement. It is recommended that following any questions from the council, that the council consider the request for ground lease from Zipley Fiber for approximately 1,600 square feet of right-of-way for the purposes of installing a telecommunications shelter with backup generator. If council is amenable to the request from Zipley, staff requests that the council approve by motion, authorizing the city manager to sign the necessary documents executing the lease agreement.
Counselor Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. So we've issued a franchise agreement, and that this is just the formalization of now here's the place for them to start putting their initial infrastructure in. Do you foresee that we further amendments for the build out, or is this should this be the end of that?
Mayor, Councilor Irvin, so this is for their hard site facility where they tie into the fiber trunk line that runs along the railroad right away, right through town. You're probably familiar with what it's a concrete shack with no windows and just air conditioners on each end. Very simple facility, but that's where they tie into the rest of the world. So everything that they'll outlay in the community will come to this via the network of either overhead or underground cable that they install. So yes, I would imagine that this is the last thing. This is how they connect to the world.
And so in that franchise agreement, does that issue the right of way to all the poles where they're allowed to?
That is correct.
Is it common to split those things up in a franchise agreement to have this separate?
Councilor, I'm not sure if it's one is the exclusive or the ability to operate in the area. This is actually to get a piece of, I'll use quote, real estate in order to have that fixed site. The fixed site could have been any number of places. We looked at potentially doing it at the existing Wi-Fi hut that we have, but there wasn't enough room there. We looked at some other places in town. So my knee jerk is to say that, yeah, this, one part is, to serve the community. This part of it is how they do it. And so, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Stewart.
Mayor and Council Urban, I'd just add that, as Mr. Mongan said, there was a lot of thought given to this. There was multiple locations. They really wanted to lease a piece of property from the city, albeit they could have went to a private sector. We did offer up a recommendation of them looking at the Village Shopping Center because there is a fiber trunk line there. But this was really kind of their preferred site as they looked around the city looking for locations. This site helped them deploy into the city, probably in the most efficiently way for them. So this really is kind of separate from the franchise agreement. They could have gotten a lease from anybody that they pursued, but they wanted to work with the city of Cottage Grove.
Counselor Black.
Madam Mayor, I move that the city council approve the lease to Ziply Fiber, the 1,600 square feet of right-of-way, as mentioned in this memorandum, so they can install telecommunication shelter with a backup generator. And I also move that the city, we approve the city manager to sign all necessary documents.
Second.
We have a motion with the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Concerns from council? Counselor Urban.
Maybe do. Counselor Drew. Well, I have a concern. I'm I'm concerned about the state of our budget. So in the conversations with staff today, I was trying to find, how do I make a motion right now that amends this budget before we pass it? And it was like, that's going to kind of screw things up at this point, in my words. And so basically, it's not my goal is to get the budget back in a healthy position. Where that comes from, I have my opinions, but I don't run the show, so my opinions are ill-informed at best. So staff needs direction. We're the ones that provide that direction. So I want to make a motion that the council directs staff to present back to council within 30 days what more could be done while targeting as close to the same level of delivery of service as possible in any and all departments to move more money to the unending fund balance and contingency. So if that's sufficient, that's my motion.
Second.
We have a motion with the second. Any other discussion? Counselor Savage.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I'm not opposed to this. I think it's great to have the conversation. My concern is that 30 days may not be enough. We've got a city council meeting at the end of June, and then we've got one we don't have one at the end of June. So then we've got one and we're also missing July's. Oh my gosh, it's already there. Good grief. Thank you. So we've got in 30, that means we're canceling the second July meeting because of the symphony. So I would push it out to an August date, just because if we're only having one city council meeting in July, then 30 days would push it to the second July date, which we're not having one. So I would welcome that conversation at like 60 days, just to give more time, or 45 days.
Is that a friendly amendment?
Yeah, I mean, if it's
So
appropriate, 45
under
days.
Robert's rules, if the
Make a
motion
friendly
maker
amendment.
agrees
Yeah.
and the second agree, then the motion is just changed.
Yeah. But I'm happy with conversation too.
I feel urgent.
Yeah.
I feel urgency. And so in my mind, I'm willing to, meet to make corrections, but I could also accept a friendly amendment. I'd be open to hear how maybe staff's opinion and the rest of the council. So I'll consider that.
Counselor Murray Day.
Yeah, that was my concern, is that what the staff feels the time they need. I know our finance director's been through a tremendous process already, and I don't know, I would like to hear from staff what you think is a reasonable time frame.
Mr. Sauerwein.
Just to clarify, Councilmember Savage, what you're suggesting is that we have the discussion at the first meeting in August. Is that, I just want to make sure I'm clear on what you're suggesting.
So I immediately went to, if this is the second one in June and we're not having a second one in July, when would that be? So it's either the beginning of July, which is not 30 days, or it's the beginning of August. So I would push to the beginning of August.
Okay, well, I would just say as a practical matter, our July 8th council meeting is already fairly significant. And what we had talked about previously is starting in September, we're going to be having one council meeting and then also a work session. And at that work session in September, we'll be talking about law enforcement budgeting and law enforcement costs. So if the council is amenable from a staff standpoint, we certainly could do this at the first scheduled meeting in August. If the 30-day time limit is important, we can look at a date to add a second meeting in July. But as was noted, our second meeting in July is the Eugene Symphony.
Counselor Savage, would you like to make a friendly amendment to do it for the first meeting in August?
Yeah, thank you. I think that would give staff enough time. I would also be okay with calling another meeting at the end of July, but I think that if we're already having the August meeting, we can just tack it onto that.
I would accept the friendly amendment.
As does the second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Any other concerns of council?
Were you not done?
Yeah, I have multiple concerns. There was some discussion, none of us know what the future holds, and there's a lot that needs to be looked at with the homeless situation in our town. And while I remain optimistic coming out of our work session about what's possible, I am hearing concerns surrounding that, and so I'm seeking additional information. One of the suggestions that I heard that I thought was very interesting concept, I don't know how practical, so I'm asking, is a change in ownership of public spaces to a non-public model, park spaces in particular. I don't know if that's viable or not, but I am curious about what is the impact of that? What does that look like? We do have at least one park in town that operates under a similar model. And we may be addressing this in the September meeting and discussing police and police budgets. But what does it look like to just do the nothing approach? I just want to have as much information about what is viable, so under any condition we can make as good choices as possible, well informed. That's going to affect budgets, it's going to affect a number of things. So I guess I'm just I'd like to see those scenarios. I don't think we really went down that road in our work session under either of those scenarios, and so my concern is that I'd like more information about what that might look like, what the potential hazards are, what the concerns around that are, so that I can better engage with residents with those ideas. Thanks.
Your Honor.
Mr. Sauerwein.
Well, obviously, this is kind of an extension of the conversation we had with the city attorney. And that's really the best way for us to get an answer for the questions you're asking. What would be helpful is if you could kind of flush out your comments a little bit, send me an email, send it to Carrie as well. And we can certainly then include that in our discussion on law enforcement that we're having in September. So I want to make sure that we're getting you the answers and the information that you're looking for. So as much as you can flush that out, that would be really helpful.
Counselor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks. I think you all should have received an email from the League of Oregon Cities that there are 7 policy committees have finished their policy setting process. And now in your email, there's a voter guide that provides additional background on each recommendation for legislative action. So the city's top administrator, which should be our city manager, receives the ballot, but we are supposed to read through the voter guide and select which are our top priorities and then discuss them and then actually vote. Each city will have 5 votes, effectively ranking their top 5 legislative priorities for the long session, which is coming up next year. Once the votes are tallied, the League of Oregon Cities Board will approve a final set of recommended priorities. And even if the top priorities are not selected by cities, the priorities came out of the policy committee, so they'll still try and advocate for them, probably just not as front and center.
Mr. Sauerwein.
Councilmember Drew, thank you for bringing that up. We've scheduled that discussion for the July 8th council meeting. It will be on the agenda under the city manager's report.
Thanks.
Well, I want to say that I do also share Councilor Irvin's concern. I felt like the last time we went through this process, coming up with the homeless solutions, that we were given pretty much one solution and had to do it or nothing. And so I would like to definitely see several come through and have us talk about all of them. Anyone else? Counselor Savage. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I also had the LOC Policy Committee's email on my list, so I will check that off. I think it is really important to note that out of the 22 legislative priorities, all 22 are going to be worked on, but they will take the top 5. So I'll do my homework so that when we go into that July meeting, we can each have a top 5 and they can take the consensus of the council as the vote, but they'll all be worked on. Also, the League of Oregon Cities Fall Conference is coming up. This year it's going to be in Bend, October 17th through 19th. So registration opens on July 24th.
Councilor Merryday.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just checking in on the status of our vacant commercial properties discussion.
Well, I think as we discussed at the council meeting, I'm reaching out to some of the business owners kind of on a one-on-one basis, and also working with the chamber director. I'd like to get in front of the chamber board at some point and discuss it with them before I report back to the city council.
I just wanted to also point out, I did see a very new for lease sign on the old Bank of America. So maybe the rumblings are reaching somewhere.
I'm hoping that's a good sign.
Thank you.
Report from the city manager.
Well, good evening, Your Honor, members of the City Council. Initially, I just want to thank you all for approving the budget. In the immortal words of Jerry Garcia, this has been a long, strange journey, but I think we've reached a good point for the budget passage for the next year. Having said that, I just want to expand a little bit on some of the comments that were made earlier. The city's current policy for a contingency is 3%. Now, we have met our policy minimum for fiscal year 2024-25. 3% of the budget is about $302,000. Within the approved budget, we have $405,000 in contingency. And unappropriated ending fund balance, our policy is 5%. And 5% for fiscal year 2024-2025 is about $415,000. And the approved budget has $693,000. Having said that, in the opinion of both myself and the finance director, those numbers really are fairly low. Those percentages are fairly low. And what we would like to be able to come back to you with, and this is part of what we were discussing earlier, is some targets for how we could improve both the contingency and the unappropriated ending fund balances in future years. And it's usually tied to a percentage, but again, we are meeting what our policy requires, but I think our policy needs to be changed a little bit. And also, just to follow up on Councilmember Drew's comment, it is certainly our intent to include in the 2025, 2026 proposed budget a 5-year revenue forecast. We've heard what you guys have said, and that's definitely something we're going to try to include in the next year's budget proposal. That questions you might have about.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. That does remind me, there were comments and they were reiterated in the concerns from the public today about, that were expressed about how transient room tax dollars come in and flow through, and how the budget might be maybe labeled certain lines so that it's more transparent to see where that money comes in and then where it goes directly. And I don't remember the specifics of the recommendation at that time, but maybe that could be included. I don't know if we need to go back to the reporting or anything, but I can in the recommendation.
What I have in my notes, thank you, Councilmember. What I have in my notes for the 2025, 2026 budget presentation is to add a bullet point dealing with transient room taxes. As you might imagine, the revenue comes in one place, it gets dispersed through a number of different places, but there's not like one place you go into the budget to say, where did the transient room taxes come from? Where did it go? So the logical thing to do is to add a bullet point about that within the budget report. So I've got that in my notes to include that in next year's budget report.
Counselor Savage.
Okay, my red light's on. Thank you. There was also a comment about the symphony, and I believe that we try and get sponsors for the symphony every single year. And so with that same accountability space, I believe there's already a line item that says this is the money going out, but this is the sponsorships coming in. And so we already delineate that, do we not?
Oh, well, we are budgeting funds for, again, thank you, Councilmember. We are budgeting funds for the cost of the symphony, the estimated cost based on what we spent last year. Having said that, it is our goal to be able to fund it as much as possible, perhaps the entire cost, through donations and through sponsorships. And I have to say, the folks in the Public Works Department have been doing an excellent journeyman job in finding us sponsors for that particular event. I don't have in front of me a list of sponsors and amounts, but I can tell you that we definitely are collecting sponsors.
Anyone else? Questions?
Well, my final issue this evening is the City Hall emergency shelter during the ice storm. As we talked about on Friday, city staff held a meeting for those involved in managing the City Hall emergency shelter during the ice storm. The meeting focused on reviewing what we learned from the recent emergency and identifying areas for improvement and preparation for future emergencies. City staff recognizes that the mayor and city council members were actively volunteered and supported the emergency shelter operations. And this evening is your opportunity for input and provide your insights. Included at your desks, I won't read through it, but was a memo from our associate planner listing kind of the major takeaways. And then also included were all of her notes directly from the meeting we had with city staff. And so at this point, I would encourage council members, if there's anything there that we missed or anything you would just like to talk about that happened during the shelter at the ice storm, we will certainly add that to our list from city staff and then republish this to all of you. So happy to hear anything that you have to say. I'm going to try to take some notes, but we are also taping this. So the folks that actually do the work will be able to not have to try to read my chicken scratch.
Councilor Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Savage had brought up the power of the written word earlier, and that's what came to my mind of, when you're in a grid down situation, your cork board or your place to have, handwritten notes to communicate information is crucial and important. And so that would be just one thing to note, that, be able to, missing person, food resource here, clean water here kind of thing, to incorporate into an emergency shelter would be fantastic, but lots of good things happened. I think most everybody was down. I made it down briefly, but was kind of stuck in my neighborhood, managing my people.
Counselor Savage.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I feel like I've got a lot to say about this topic. We lost power on a Saturday, and I think everybody in town couldn't move out of their own space for a minimum of 3 days because of the ice. So I didn't make it down to City Hall to volunteer until on day 3. But starting on day 3, I spent hours and hours here at City Hall helping folks navigate the inclement weather, helping folks figure out where their next meal was coming from. If we could have cots readily available, I think we finally got cots on day 5. We had them for one night, and then Red Cross came in and we had cots over at the community shelter. That was extremely helpful, but it would have been helpful to have them sooner. There were folks, there's a lot of miscommunication. It states it in here, but there was a lot of miscommunication between the hospital dropping off patients because patients were being discharged, but they didn't have power at their home. So this was a safe space, but we didn't know that they were arriving, and we didn't have the knowledge to care for them. There are people with medical knowledge, but that doesn't mean it's appropriate for that caregiving space. And there were some folks that really had some medical needs that needed to be addressed. And that was really hard to navigate. When Red Cross came in and we did the transfer over to the community center, that was a really good transfer. However, there was little conversation between the emergency shelter here and the Red Cross shelter there. And I continued to volunteer there, trying to update the Red Cross with a lot of the medical needs that we had seen here at this emergency shelter and what were needed at the other emergency shelter. I continued to work with one family for another 3 months. We just finally got one woman in her own space up in Washington not too long ago. And that was a really, really long process to find her appropriate care. And it was really hard to navigate with adult disabled services and trying to get this person on disability or Social Security or some sort of income. She kind of fell between all of the cracks, and although intakes were being done, nothing was happening in a timely manner. So there was a lot of navigation, and she needed somebody to advocate for her. So I feel blessed to have been there for her, but I even took her dog into my home and house sat her dog until she was in a space to be able to make the realization that she could not keep that dog. It was not appropriate. And then we found a second home, but this dog was in my home for quite some time. So I think just having a better form of communication. When I heard written word, I was thinking chalkboards. You know, you don't have a printer, you can't print off something to put into a really nice sandwich board. You know, it looks good, but if you don't have power or a chalkboard would work. Just a simple sandwich chalkboard, just have 1 or 2 of those lying around, and messages could be updated periodically. It could even direct you to where there's a cork board where we can put things on a cork board and say, okay, food is here. Medical care is here. Four questions, call this number or go to this between these times, and that's hard to do. I remember driving around with Georgia, the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce, and we were delivering food. We were knocking on doors. There were mobile homes, senior citizen parks and mobile homes, and we were knocking on doors to make sure people had food. It was a tough time. There were so many people that volunteered, and as Grovers, it was really amazing to see how people came together. And we saw that in Snowpocalypse. We saw that in the ice storm. We see that during fire season. We are a resilient community, and that should be acknowledged as well.
Councilor Nardi.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd lived just across the street, basically, and had gas on at the house. So fortunately didn't have any issues. So I was able to spend quite an amount of time here as well. And I noticed that most of the people that made it to the shelter got here either by chance, they were walking by and noticed activity, or word of mouth from someone that had been here and got word to them. So again, I wanted to emphasize the written word idea, the sandwich board idea that could be put out. I know it's old school, but it's very effective. And also, I noticed there was no mention of the community sharing. They were here from the beginning and delivered a large quantity of food, blankets, and pillows, whereas the formerly very vibrant Beds for Freezing Nights was missing in action and didn't show up until it was game over. So community sharing was a vital partner in the providing services. I went to our church and got the hot water things for the food they delivered, and there was materials available there that I could have gotten, but I had no authorization to take them out of the storage at our church. So yeah, those were the comments I wanted to emphasize from the notes.
I wanted to start with reading something that I read previously after the ice storm, and it came from the Peace Health Oregon Network Environment of Care Emergency Management Manager. And she said, please say that I was impressed with how Cottage Grove pulled together to support each other and the community. We learn from our lessons each time we go through such disasters. It's nice to see the cream rise to the top when duty calls. And I want to remind everyone that Cottage Grove was the first to get our shelter up and running. And I need to circle back to what you just said for Beds for Freezing Nights, because they actually were here early on and they were offering cots, and but we were unsure if we were going to move right away to the community center and or go to the armory, and there was some questions about generators and what would be the most effective, and we weren't sure when power was going to come back on, and we kept getting reassessed and new updates. And so that's actually an incorrect statement, Councilor Mary Day, and they were at the ready. And then when they were given the go ahead, we did bring all the cots over and blankets and pillows, and they were here to help set up too as well. So but this community was fantastic in pulling together, and we do always learn, and staff was wonderful. And I think that this is a great step, getting all of these emergency workers together and with our city staff, so that we can be just that much better in the future, and really have such great appreciation for all the volunteers that were here every day. And it was a difficult situation for all of us. And there was a lot of rock stars that went unnamed, people giving out firewood at the Elks Lodge. Even the football team came out to try to help. And so many restaurants donated food. And so, you know, connecting with our community partners was a huge, huge priority of our city. And our staff was great at reaching out. And beyond that, a lot of the businesses were great at contacting us as well. Welt and Welt was another one that came out and did a lot for us, filling up our giving us the gas for our generators. And without that, that would have been Cascade, extending their hours and going and picking up generators. You know, that's beyond the call of duty. So, you know, that's the beauty of a small town. And we were really ahead of the game when it comes to that. Councilor Dreher.
Thank you, Mayor. I see one of the points on here was lack of safety knowledge, especially regarding generators and space heaters. Some of the deaths could have been avoided or prevented with appropriate safety measures. Getting ahead and providing a safety campaign would be good. September is Emergency Preparedness Month, and we always do a preparedness fair. So I wonder, did staff talk about how are we going to be preparing for the preparedness fair, so that we can really capitalize on people's interest and make sure they have life-saving information, more than just like, I appreciate I like the good bingo where you go around and you get stamps from things, but actually making sure there's hands-on activities and not just giving things away, but people actually learning. Talking about the Map My Neighborhood, where you get to know who's in your neighborhood, who would need help in an event, who has pets, children, things like that, so we can really level up.
Counselor Flack.
I think the thing I appreciated most is that, small town, Faye Stewart gave me a call. I was able to act and move quickly. And I think having a database of kind of key folks in town that can help provide services would be really, really valuable. And I know that that's something we do have, but I think it's probably a patchwork where we reach out to the other person to get a number to another person. And I think that maybe having a list, of stakeholders and or backup people. I mean, what if that stakeholders, I'll be honest, there was a couple hours I had to walk to work and get a bag of ice because I couldn't get out of my driveway, or rock salt. And so I didn't add ice, honest. I didn't. But I mean, literally, I'm on a hill, and as soon as I got my back tires on my driveway, I started sliding towards my wife's car. It's like, oh, okay, this is not going to work. I had to put in 4-wheel drive to get back into my driveway. So I think just if I wasn't around, having a second contact person at community sharing, and and once again, I mean, I think it's silly to look at who did what, but how can we improve? This isn't about patting ourselves on the back. It's about being resilient. And so, that's where we really need to focus is, I think we did an exceptional job. This was much better than Snowmageddon. Obviously a little bit different challenges, and we did Snowmageddon in an excellent manner. So I think we just keep building on success. And like I said, I think, I agree with the neighbor to neighbor stuff. I think there were people that didn't know, about what was going on in town, so improve there, but also just, having that database of folks to call in that type of event. That'd be my 2 cents.
Counselor Savage.
Counselor Flack, as you're talking about that, I recall that the community center puts together a little yellow book yearly of resources. What if one of their questions were to be, are you willing to be available in an emergency? And if so, have some sort of star and asterisk next to it and keep it in the city manager's office for this type of event. Because a lot of those spaces, a lot of those folks are a lot of the stakeholders. Just thought, since we're already talking to folks.
I think, I'm sorry if I could jump in. I don't think I'd want a public list, because then that one person might get overwhelmed. I think we still want to have it all, coming through our emergency operations person, but certainly having that list, absolutely.
Or at least generating it from those conversations, even if it is a separate list
Sure.
for the city manager's office, if we're already talking to a lot of those same folks. It's just a simple question. Would you be a contact? Do you have a second contact? If community sharing, if we couldn't get a hold of you, Mr. Fleck, do you have a second contact? And generating that list in those same conversations, so we're not double dipping on a lot of those. Just a thought.
Mr. Sauerwein, there is a member of the audience that's raising his hand, and I know had a particularly impactful experience through the ice storm. Is it proper to allow them a minute to speak? Art,
That would certainly be up to the chair.
Art, did you have something you wanted to say quickly? Can you pull up to can someone bring him?
Thank you. Some years ago in Canada, they had an ice storm like we just had. They had no power, nothing. Like Cottage Grove, we have a train engine that's dedicated to Cottage Grove. That's one of the largest generators there is. And if we could have a hookup to run infrastructure, we could run that engine and at least get power to the infrastructure, not having to depend on small generators and worrying about
running all over the place getting fuel. And that big electric generator right there could power a lot of infrastructure in this town.
Thank you for your input, Art. Oh. All right, Linda. This will be our last comment for the evening.
So we actually have I'm Linda Olson. We have a great resource here in town. Our Public Works Director is actually our emergency manager also. And he works with the fire department and the Public Works and the police and all that. He works with Lane County. Our fire department has a CERT program that actually is a great resource for the community to get emergency preparedness training, life-saving training. These are resources that we could be actually utilizing more efficiently here in town. Our community came together. There's always room for improvement, but knowing who is actually our key connection is the priority here. And that is our emergency management manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. All right. Anyone else on council have a comment? Mr. Sauerwein, are you done?
No, that would conclude my report, Your Honor.
All right. Well, there's no city attorney, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.